Okay, welcome. This is my presentation. It's a 6 video series where I'm talking about human design and creative flow. This is super foundational. I'm going to bring in a lot of information about all sorts of things that will set the foundation for us to do the sort of clearing and screening and assessment in order to then start to go deeper into that human design system and have it be effective. So we're really laying the landscape and looking at our container as a body, the mind, body, spirit container. And so I've put together what I think is a pretty good stepping stones foundation of with my experience of creative flow in the creative industry, being a creator and an artist across different um, modalities and types of art, as well as psychology, how the mind works, how the body works, and all of the spiritual lessons that I've undertaken. It's kind of all woven in here with that layer of human design. So we'll just be weaving some of that in today. I think this is going to go for around 15 to 20 minutes. So we'll see whether I manage to get it in at that stage. So if we have 6 videos, it might come in at about an hour and 20 minutes all up. So let's see how we go. So with that being said, my name is Natalie, and I am Natural Flow Alchemy, the founder, creator of Natural Flow Alchemy. Again, weaving in together human design and creative flow. So this is series 1 in my video series, and these are the chapters that we have to go through. So we've got disconnected and deconditioning, which is the chapter we're on today. Then we've got in sync with cycles, auric types, the experiment, authority, and play as medicine. And we go deeper into the human design in chapters 3, 4, and 5 with the kind of other supportive information surrounding it, getting us ready for that, integrating that basic foundational human design information. So, disconnected to deconditioned. The chapters that we're going to cover today: asleep at the wheel. We're going to go over rules, limits, and laws. We're going to look at distractions, career, education, health. And I guess I'm going to have so many caveats. Of all of the caveats, it's not to say that any of these things are completely or inherently bad or anything. When I put those things under the layer of distractions, obviously I'm going to go a bit deeper when we get to that. So it might seem surprising, but I will explain when we get into that part of the chapter. We're going to go to influence, blocks to magic, touch on relationships, old and unhealthy patterns, and the mind as the creator. We're going to look at unlearning and releasing in relation to open centers, that is to do with human design, which I'll explain. And we're going to look at feminine and masculine, responsibility and action versus yielding and receiving, and getting that balance right. So let's kick off into the first part of this chapter. Asleep at the wheel. Outsourced decisions. So this is obviously it's going to depend what generation you are. It's going to depend how you grew up, who you grew up around. This comes from my perspective and from the situations immediately around me, and the types of people that I grew up around and learnt from. The teachers at institutions. So I guess I'm sort of talking about the generation before mine, where there was generationally a connection to news. Like, it was a time when television and TV and were introduced into society, and it was a source of information to listen to, which made you connected. Obviously, it's kind of predating the internet the way that we use it today. So with that being said, like, there was a certain trust built with having an authority figure on the outside of us tell us what was going on, what we should be listening to. And we tended to outsource. And I'm going to like, I say we as in humanity. I talk very broadly often about just humans, humanity, evolution, because we are all part of the same team, right? So it's not the generation before us like did anything wrong. It's not like that. It's also to do with the astrological cycles. And even in human design, we look at the current 400 and I think 15-year cycle, which ends in 2027. This has been the cross of planning. And so it has been about industry and creating structures and systems external to, obviously we've built cities and we've built countries and we've built services that at some point had were in service to the people. But as we are coming to this big junction of 2027, there is a crossover, and the cross of planning is ending, and we're going into the cross of the sleeping phoenix. And it's going to be a different vibe. It's going to be a different feeling. And what you might notice if you're watching things or listening to different various people, there is obviously there's a lot of upheaval in the world. There's a lot kind of getting in terms of control and government control. um, you'll notice rules and limits and laws, new laws, restrictions, surveillance. um, Obviously the school system, people are questioning whether we want to be sending our kids who are neurodiverse into a school system which is going to constrict them and make them behave and act a certain way, with limitations on them and what they do with their bodies and how they move. So getting back to that, it has been a time of people have outsourced their decisions. They're looking for advice to news programs. They're looking to their doctor, to a GP for advice. They're going maybe to a hospital for health advice. Where so we're doing what other people tell us that we should be doing. We're listening to school organizations and pathways of learning and saying that we have to have learnt in this certain way and have these certain marks and be ticked off to be qualified. And I'm not saying that those things don't have certain validity. And again, in the past, like it has been a way for there to be some kind of uniformity understanding. That's what rules, and kind of laws and limits do. However, this is the tide of the times. And with this shifting, the astrological shift, that is why we're seeing a lot of this starting to come undone, because we've created these systems which have been of benefit. We've gotten what we need from them. Now we need to, rebalance and reframe and start to let go of some things. So it is like a time of awakening. It's a time of coming back into our bodies. Like we're seeing so much around somatic practices, and so much around natural health, and so much around, having children homeschooled. We don't want our health choices taken off of us, which is something that has happened, lately. And, we kind of become aware that all of these choices and this autonomy and this sovereignty is quite limited. So as we become more switched on and more aware of that, what we want to understand how to do is to bring in that internal authority and that internal awareness, and to understand how to ask the questions of our own body and do what is correct and right for us, regardless of what the mind says, regardless of what external forces would be trying to suggest that we do, or beyond suggest force. So it's a time of the individual rebellion, because those of us that are really excited about these kind of breaking chains are on the forefront going, hey, yeah, let's like drive with this. We're excited. We want to hold others who are, maybe have a little bit more fear or concern around these breaking systems. But there is nothing to be afraid of. It's perfectly timed and aligned. And it's a stage of evolution where we get to look beyond those external rules. We get to say what has worked, what is not working, what do we not want to be like overly governed on. How do we take that sense of inner authority back to us? That's what human design is. That's what part of this course will get to eventually, and I think in the third chapter we start to get into that. And I've got consciousness there as a note. So we're looking at, and we've got the balance of the scale. So I've been talking about, there's been a time where we've looked to these external sources and like the laws and lawmakers to offer justice. But what we may be coming to understand as a collective is that, it's an eye for an eye. It doesn't necessarily do anyone any good, like in an immediate sense. And certainly like the justice system is not working in terms of like over incarceration and the prison system used to exploit the prisoners. So we do see that happening. And we still have to fight so much for justice. So we're sort of seeing how that's not necessarily been working for us, or it's not going to work anymore. But sorry, I say consciousness is there. So if we go back to the fact that we are expressions of consciousness, each of us, we have a particular filter. That's what the human design, that energetic blueprint in the system shows us, is that we have a specific filter, that we are here. Our definition is that filter. And so coming into awareness of what it is, how it is that we are filtering that consciousness, and what we are here to demonstrate and to have as our just our direction, our particular, what we're here to represent. And consciousness wants to witness itself, so it wants to witness us represent ourselves clearly and in clean alignment to what we are here to represent. So again, that's like why human design is just such this like way to get into the clarity of what your filter of consciousness is, therefore understanding how you make decisions that are right for you, letting go of those external influences. So it's we're waking up. Onto the next page. Here we have distractions. So just talking about further, my cat's jumping on the bed, so he might like turn the thing maybe, or you'll hear him crunching. But distractions. So it's not to say that anybody who is career driven is distracted. It's not, again, I'm not like saying that it's like that, or anyone that's excited about working or has a job or has mastered something or has a career. If it's authentic to that person and that's the way that they should be doing things, that's all well and good. I've got distractions here with my cat, but it's not a one-way road, is like why I've put that there. It's not a one size fits all or a one size pathway. And we have media and a school system and a health system, again, talking about those external authorities that have been directing us into a particular way that we need to go in order to get what we want. So it's sort of like the carrot is dangled, always. So like if you want to get this out of life, the only way to do that is to like follow this pathway that we've directed for you, that will then sign off that you're qualified or capable. Or even in terms of medical, things are very siloed. So you may be directed to look at something to do with your health, which is not holistically connected to other aspects of your life, your emotional state. So they are distractions because we're not looking at things in a very holistic or integrated way. Often we are occupied by outrage. So if you are listening to, are you coming here? What are you going to do? If we are listening, subscribing to the news, listening to those sort of what is spoon-fed to us, then we will constantly be put into a state of fear and distraction based on what is going on. But if you understand the chain of how these news stories get aired, the commonalities between the different channels, the choice of focus on specific issues that are really the type of issues that are designed to make you feel like you have less you are out of control, or you're in harm's way, or there's something sinister going on, something that continues to keep you attached to the greater body of control because you need them for safety. And if you don't have them for safety, then somehow you're going to be like a victim to harm. And that is the narrative that we're seeing perpetuated in like common main media cycles. It's really like keeping everybody keeping those limitations on everybody. What I have noticed, and I'm talking about generational differences, what I have noticed in the generations that are more connected to listening to news sources, they talk about critical thinking a lot and talking about the fact that they don't actually believe everything that's on the news, but they can be critical and hear some things and decide what they want to take from it. And I guess the point that I want to make to that is that what we know about the brain now and how the brain through repetition will grow pathways, neural pathways, we don't necessarily have the ability to be as discerning as we think that we can if we're exposing ourselves consistently to messaging. So what I feel like people are doing who are more conscious of it are making the decision not to expose themselves to things that they have to try and be discerned. Like if the source is not trusted, then I don't want to spend my valuable time absorbing any of what they've got to say because the source is not credible and their motives are not honorable, or there's no integrity. There used to be, I'm not saying there isn't now, like journalistic integrity, and you can still find journalists who have integrity, but I wouldn't say that they're plugged into the mainstream media. And we can know this through conversations that we have with people who we know in the industry. So firsthand information of people who are working there. And myself, I had a position uh, in the public health system for over a decade. So I've got internal knowledge in terms of how the health system is structured, and how that puts people at the center of their care, which it doesn't. So with that being said, we need to be mindful of these distractions and really look at what are we wanting to put into our minds, what are we really wanting to focus on. And I think it's a bit of a trap in thinking that you can listen to things and be discerning around what you will take in and what you won't. Um, I'm trying not to contradict myself as well, because I will definitely hear other opinions and listen to things that are potentially controversial or not the main way of doing things. But I guess it's ensuring that you have that mix of input. I think a mix of input is where you can bring discernment into. But if you're looking at one particular news program and it's a main source of information, especially if you're taking note of how you feel in response to it. And I guess that's like one of the key points is, how do you feel in response to what you're listening to or hearing? Does it feed doubt and fear? Does it feed anxiety and nervousness? And does it keep you small and limited in that way, or does it show you what is possible in the world and install like faith and resilience? This is what we need to be making sure that we have that balance, and we're really focusing on the things that are going to be creating the neural pathways that are towards opportunity. Hopefully I've covered that one enough. I don't think I'm going to get in it. I don't know how long this is going to be, but we've got a few more slides. On to blocks to magic. And within this slide, I'm talking about relationships, unhealthy patterns, the mind is the creator, and the nervous system. So it kind of works. I guess that's why I wrote it this way. So in relationships, we can get often again caught in those cycles of outsourcing decisions, being concerned with what opinions are, or the preferences of the people around us. So it's about monitoring and seeing, are the preference of those, are the other person's preferences continually supporting us to come back into what our body tells us and what our decision making strategy advises for us, or are they trying to tell us that they know best and they think they know what they think they know what we should be doing? That is, that's constantly pulling you out of your own inner authority. You may have a very unique pathway that you need to discover and you need to tread. And there are systems, again, like going back to those distracted systems, that can keep us and hold us in what we think is familiar and what we feel like is security. And again, it might come down to generational things, but I'll always bring it to that next level, that generationally we see planetary shifts and planetary changes, and those outer planets are always changing for the generations. So that's why we see these differences in how we relate, how our relationships look, how our housing and homes look, because those outer planets have shifted for the entire generation. So I'm trying to cover those two levels there, because it really is those planetary activations that are governing, I guess, like our behaviors and how the human experience. And again, like that's why human design and astrology works for us when we look at it from that level, because we can see the evidence in the life and in the world and in the collective of of those planetary governances. So with that being said, relationships, like if they're taking away from our internal knowing, or they're not supporting us to really come into our own inner awareness and balance in order to make decisions that are best for ourselves. Like that's where we want to be analyzing our relationships, and are we holding on to relationships that are no longer serving? It's not just relationships in terms of unhealthy patterns, but it can be all sorts of things that keep us limited, and hold us back from stepping into something more sustaining, more fulfilling, more satisfying. Yeah, that's I guess what this is my kind of goals, and my values is to support people to really crack open, and look at the unlimited life, to see the fullest potential of what we can do when we're using our mind to create the reality. So we're talking about those distractions of news and all of that information that gets in our way, like whatever um environment we choose to put ourselves in. If we choose to be in a workforce, there's always talking about, I don't know, something that's boring, something that's unhelpful. If they're just running loops, which is like a real office thing. If you've ever watched The Office or worked in an office, you'll be familiar with these looping patterns where you have the same problems that are coming back and back, and no one really knows how to like get out of them. And they think that they can't get out of them, and they kind of like get stuck in there, and they're just like, this is an office. This is what office culture is like. That is what your mind then is going to be continuously creating, unless you work out how to step out of that loop and look back and down on it and say, I like, there is a loop we're in, we need to step out, we need to do something differently. And what can we create? Like, what are we going to think about differently in order to create a different outcome? We may be visioning that different outcome. We're writing it down. Like, what is this plan? Like, what is going to change? How are things going to change? And that's why, in workspaces and, in my experience with office culture, like implementing change can be really difficult, because the mind is very attached to its biases. It's very attached to the pathways that we've created and that we've made, and we really don't like, we kind of want to have faith in how we think. So it's not without its challenges, but there are a lot of different things that you can read and practices that you can work on that cultivate cleaning up and clearing the way that our mind creates. So something like Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. Psycho-Cybernetics is the book. Highly recommend that book to work on getting in touch and kind of controlling your mind movie, the movie of your life with your mind, and understanding that the mind is creating everything. So if you're again going around in loops, or if you're really stuck on limiting beliefs, then that is what is going to keep being continuously created. So if we're in those unhealthy patterns, in those unhealthy relationships, we're going to keep, having that return to us, unless we work out how to step outside of it, or gain that autonomy, or gain that sense of inner authority, and understand how to disconnect the mind from the decisions that we're making with the body. Obviously, the nervous system is connected to this too. So if we're really fried, again, from news cycles, we're really stressed, and nervous, and we have that tension, and we have that trauma in our bodies, and we all hold trauma, and we all experience trauma, like capital T trauma, big events, and minor traumas, minor conflicts, minor conflict shocks. So that is something that we're all managing, and they will continue to pop up. But it's about connecting to those root causes of nervous system issues. So what has created this sense of nervousness? Again, looking at a human design chart is super supportive for looking at your particular nervous system, and how your emotions play into your nerves. So the root cause is always like emotions and conflicts. When we are clearing those levels, all of these levels, that's when their access to magic is going to start opening up. So with all of these things in place, and I'm sure there's more, maybe this is not a conclusive list, but this is what I'm sticking to today. These are some primary blocks to magic, and blocks to creating the reality and the limitless life of your dreams. Are you right? My cat just got his little, it used to be a feather, now it's just a nub. Can you come over here? Good boy. All right, so open flow, unlearning and releasing. This is really, again, where we get to looking at your own personal energetic blueprint, which you find in human design. When you get that body graph, you'll be able to see where particularly in the body graph you have open centers. Where you have open centers particularly is where we are most open to influence from external forces. But it's not just, influence from one thing. We have the ability in open centers to have changing experiences, changing perspectives. They're designed that way because we accumulate wisdom through those openness. So making sure that we keep that flow going. If you know anything about chakras, we have, well, traditionally we talk about 7 chakras, although when you're looking at different levels of the chakra system, there are hundreds of chakras, and hundreds of energy centers. But the old way was this 7-centered being. Human design is like this upgraded 9-center being. So where it's sort of the next stage of evolution. So, but traditionally with chakras, we're talking about the flow between those energy centers and how they are, we talk about stuck chakras, like, so how the flow is connecting to the next one along. So, we've got root, sacral, the solar plexus, the heart, the throat, the third eye, and the crown. That's like the 7 ones. When we get to human design, we now have a spleen, so it's not, we have the solar plexus, but we also have a spleen, and the heart has been pulled into 2. So we've got a will center, and an identity center comes from the heart. So that's where we get the 9 from. So you can have, some people have all open centers. They're called reflectors, and we'll get into that in the next chapter of this series. But when we have a look at that body graph, we can really tap into where are those open centers? What are we needing to let flow in that center rather than holding on to any one experience? So again, if we're in particular relationships or something that feels unhealthy or unsatisfying, or you're feeling a bit bitter in your relationships or even angry, or frustrated, we might be looking at some of those open centers and what is impacting, what is affecting it. And that could be work or relationships, or any, or even health, because like the body is all represented in the body graph in human design as well. So we want to be looking at those open spaces and sort of unlearning what we're attached to, what we're particularly attached to, unlearning our how we really like hold on to certain beliefs and biases, really just allowing the sort of the flow of information to come through us. It's going to be different again, if you haven't done your body graph, or you may have already. Some people have fixed head centers, crown and ajna, and some are open. So with the defined head centers or crown, you're going to have a fixed way of mentally processing. And I have openness, so I have continuously new information and perspectives that come through, which is what enables me to put together something like this and beyond, because I'm able to like take so many different bits of information that have come my way. Someone with fixed mental processing like may have more I'm not going to say rigidity, like it sort of is, or maybe it's just stability with the way that they think, or process things. It's not right or wrong. They have just a different set of abilities, probably a little bit more, scientific or mathematical, or procedural or linear, or those type of things. Or maybe they like to learn things in steps. Again, I'm probably picking up the like different kind of keywords there. But essentially, it's, getting in touch with your particular body graph. You're going to be looking at what you need to release, what you need to clear, where the influence might be caught up, and, beginning that practice of letting that go. That is a big part of deconditioning in human design. And as we start to decondition, what we're doing is we're clearing what we're not here to be so that we can focus on that filter of consciousness, what we actually are here to represent. And that's the difference between the definition in a human design chart and the openness or the undefined aspects. That's what we get to taste, test, and like look at different experiences in the openness, while having access to lots of different like ways of being, and then having the tuning into the actual filter of consciousness. Well, we are here to be the fixed way that we're the fixed representation of who we are, and leaning into that. And so this is the last slide I have here for today: balancing feminine and masculine. And there is a typo there, masculine. So I apologize for that. Just seen it. So those two aspects, masculine, responsibility and action. There's way more keywords that I can use for feminine and masculine, but I just kind of want to pitch them both in this way. Responsibility and action is how we're looking at the masculine. Yielding and receiving is the feminine. But I also want to say I don't feel like that's exclusive to either one. And what, this is where the difference between talking about the yin and yang, or the polarity type of feminine and masculine. I'm not necessarily ascribing them to a man and a woman. So I'm not necessarily talking about gender. I'm talking about those traits of responsibility and action and yielding and receiving. And, each and every one of us as individuals wants to get this balance right within us, because that inner balance is then going to reflect into our outer life. If we know how to accept, to receive, to stop, to yield, to give way, to relax, to flower, like those feminine things, like it doesn't matter what gender you are, you can, a man, non-binary, or a woman, anywhere in between. It's You're still wanting to have access to that yielding aspect. And then on the contrast, a highly feminized woman, or a non-binary, or a man wants to have access to that responsibility and action, to that drive and stamina to say, okay, that it's working between those two flow states. It is all about creative flow. And those two states are so important, to know when you need to step back, to stop, to relax, and to yield. And when it's time to take action and it's time to take responsibility for yourself, stand up and take the steps towards what you want, take what you want, ask for what you want. It's that, it's assertiveness and it's action in, and it's yielding and receiving. And when we get that balance right, that internal harmony and that inner union, that's when we can see that outer union working better, much better. And again, it's everything coming back into the self as an authority. And this is not to say that we don't want to have external partnerships or relationships. By no means, like, would I that is that what this is about. It's nurturing, nourishing those external relationships by being in alignment and harmony with your own flow state. And then you're welcoming the correct relationships, and you're sustaining the right relationships. And people don't feel like they owe anything to anyone, and they're not doing things out of obligation, or because they have to, or because they think they should. So when you're keeping contracts and agreements open and fluid and flexible between relationships, that's when we're really able to support each other to be who we're here to be and click into place in a really organic way, supporting the flow of life. That is what all of this is about. So with that being said, I want to close up this first chapter, this first part of my series 1 of Creative Flow in Human Design. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. The next video will be sent on the next day, so you can watch these at your own leisure. And thank you for being here, and see you at the next session. Ciao.